Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Syllabus 5090, O-Level Biology. June 13, question paper 1-2. And we're going to discuss the last 20 questions. So this is question 21 to 40. Life is all about making choices. Always do your best to make the right ones. And always do your best to learn from the wrong ones. So we all make choices, some good, some bad. The good ones will take a long way, but the bad ones will give us experience and we will learn from them. Question 21. The diagram represents 3 bones from the forelimb of a human skeleton not drawn to scale. Between which parts will a ball and socket joint be formed? So you see, ball and socket joint would be between this 3, this is the humerus, of course. So it will be 3 and 5. You see, this will come here, this will come here. So I mean, if I had to draw this, I would just draw the humerus would somehow fit in here, this part. This part would fit in here. And this would be the shoulder joint. And this would be the ball and socket joint. You see, this is the ulna. And the ulna forms a U-shaped joint here, but this is the elbow joint. This is not a ball and socket joint, that's a hinge joint. So if you know it very well, only then you can do this question. So you need to revise this chapter, you need to look at a few diagrams, put in the Google search forelimb and then look at the bones. Question 22. Which processes help the excretion of carbon dioxide from the lungs? So which processes help the excretion of carbon dioxide? You see, what we have to understand is that there's diffusion of the carbon dioxide, but then the inhaling and the exhaling helps you to remove it from the... So carbon dioxide evaporation is not possible. Water evaporates into gases, not carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a gas by itself. So diffusion and muscle action. Muscle action means the intercostal muscles, external intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm muscles, which are going to contract, and then the volume change occurs and pressure, and then air moves in from high pressure to low pressure, and then the muscles relax, and then that results in a high pressure inside the lungs, and the carbon dioxide is exhaled out. So it is the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm muscles. If these got paralyzed, the person dies. And that is why we put them on a ventilator. So these two muscles contract and change the volume of the chest cavity, and that results a change in pressure. And this pressure change causes air to move in or air to move out of the lungs. You have to understand this if you have to do this question. And question 23, the diagram represents a section through the human brain. 1 is the cerebrum, 3 is the medulla, 4 is the cerebellum, 2 is the hypothalamus. What are the numbered parts? So 1 is the cerebrum, 4 is the cerebellum, 3 is the medulla, and 2 is the hypothalamus. So it's a very good diagram for you to revise the different parts of the brain. Then coming to the next question. 24. Insulin is a hormone synthesized in the pancreas and is distributed around the body by the blood. So insulin produced in the pancreas enters the blood, is carried all around the body. What describes its rate of secretion and its concentration in the blood? So rate of secretion is varied and concentration in the blood is also varied. If I've had 2 to 3 or 4 gulab jamuns, well, they're very, very sweet. So, I mean, the insulin is going to be produced in large amounts. But if I only had half a gulab jamun, well, then not so much insulin is going to be produced. Or if I had maybe 2 rotis, and as compared to that, I only had half a roti. So rate of secretion is varied, depends upon how much of the glucose is present in the blood. And the glucose present in the blood is varied also because it depends on how much you've eaten. Have you thought this is the last meal of the century and you're eating like a, I don't know what, don't want to name that. So what describes its rate of secretion and its concentration in the blood? So rate of secretion is also varied and concentration in the blood is also varied because less insulin is produced when less glucose levels are high. More is produced when more glucose levels are high. So we're talking of the concentration of insulin in the blood. Insulin is a hormone. What describe its? So this its is insulin. I mean, there's a little catch in the English. That's why I always say students with good English score much better. Then question 25. The diagram shows the appearance of the side view of the lens when it focuses on objects at different distances from the eye. Which shows the appearance of the lens when a person focuses on a near object. So if you remember my previous one, near more convex and distant less convex. So near had to be Q. There's only one answer to that. So near more convex, Nadia more crazy. DLC, Daniel less crazy. Right? You have to learn it also. I'm not saying just ratify this, you have to learn it also. So please understand this. Then coming on to question number 26. During the production of yogurt and cheese, the pH of the mixture changes. What causes the change in pH? It's the anaerobic respiration, and what we're talking about is yogurt and cheese. What do we have in yogurt and cheese? We have bacteria. And these bacteria use up the lactose, and that results in lactic acid. So what causes the change in pH? It has to be an acid or an alkali. Others are all wrong. Which component of cigarette smoke is the main cause of lung cancer? There's only one cause, tar. But what do they do? How do they prove it? They rub tar on the skin of mice, and the mice developed cancerous changes in the skin. So the tar is the one. Nicotine causes vasoconstriction. Carbon monoxide combines with hemoglobin to form carboxyhemoglobin. So that's what the one less oxygen carrying capacity because number of red blood cells which have carboxyhemoglobin are not going to transport any oxygen. Now, looking at question number 28, the diagram shows energy flow in a food web. Now, sunlight. Now, I've given you examples of this. One is a tree because light is being absorbed by one, so one has to be the producer. So, say one is a tree. Now, look at three caterpillars. So, energy from the tree. So, the caterpillars are eating up the tree. So, the energy is flowing from the tree to the caterpillars. Now, the caterpillars are being eaten by two. What is two? Two is a bird, could be like a pigeon. You don't say birds and insects, you have to name them in a food chain. So maybe a pigeon is eating the caterpillars as well as also eating the leaves or maybe eating the flowers or the petals of some flowers on that tree. And now three is caterpillars. Now the caterpillars are also eaten by the hawk, which is four. And five is small birds, very tiny birds. You see these black ones. I see them, a lot of them in my garden. And they're very nice. They make a very nice, sing very nice songs. I love the way they tweet around the place. It's not Twitter but tweet. So five is small bird. So the small bird also eats the caterpillars. So the energy is flowing from the caterpillar to the small bird, 3 to 5. And then five, the small bird. We've got the bigger bird is a hawk here, the 4 one. So the energy, when it takes the small bird, eats the small bird, well, it gets energy from it. Like you eat meat, you get energy from it. And the hawk can also eat the caterpillar. It's not a very nice example of food chains, but I just want you to explain it. So which number represents an organism that eats both plants and animals? So the arrow had to come out of one because the one was the plant. And that was only two because the two was the bird which was also eating a caterpillar. So organism that eats both plants and animals. And because one had to be plants, so two was eating the plant as well, and two was eating. So one is the producer, three is the primary consumer, five is the secondary consumer, and then four would be the tertiary consumer. 2 would be at times when it's eating 1, it is a primary consumer. When it is eating 3, it is actually the secondary consumer. And I could make you an MCQ on that as well. Which number is at times a primary consumer, at times a secondary consumer? If you only knew the food chain, only then you could do this question. Brilliantly difficult question. Then the diagram represents the flow of substances within a balanced ecosystem. The boxes are various trophic levels. Which box represents producers? Now you've got to understand is producers are the first trophic level. So the key that was given you shows flow of organic substances, this sort of the double-lined arrow. And this one was the shows the flow of carbon dioxide. Very, very clearly you can differentiate between the two. Now let me just explain this to you in a different manner. Now let's first color the carbon dioxide arrows, and that makes life very easy. The carbon dioxide arrows were this. This was carbon dioxide. This was carbon dioxide. This was carbon dioxide. This was carbon dioxide. So all this was carbon dioxide, while the flow of organic substances was only this. Flow of organic substances was only this. So now we've got to understand is carbon dioxide was coming in from all sides into B. So B would have been the photosynthesizing one, because I'm just going to rub this off so that you can see the arrows coming. So you see this arrow was also coming this way, and then it was coming here. And this arrow was coming out. So the plant is firing, producing carbon dioxide, then the carbon dioxide being used by the plant. So B had to be a producer. So you have to look at the different arrows: flow of carbon dioxide, flow of organic substances. So this is what we had to understand in this question. Which box represents producers? You would have figured that out from the carbon dioxide kahani. Then coming to question number 30, the diagram shows part of the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen compounds in plants, nitrates, nitrogen compounds in animals, ammonium compounds. Which stages depend on bacteria? Depend on bacteria is what? Nitrogen compound in plants to nitrogen. This is feeding and digestion. And then R was what? Ammonium compounds to nitrates. That's nitrification. Bacteria are involved in that. Nitrifying bacteria. And what was Q? Nitrogen compounds in animals to ammonium compound. This is the decomposing bacteria or the decomposition. What was S? Nitrogen compounds in plants from nitrates. So this is absorption by roots, S. So unless you knew the nitrogen cycle, please go on to the video for nitrogen cycle and please revise that. So that was the nitrogen cycle. Question 31. Which factor does not help to make the mosquito an effective vector of malaria? Mosquitoes are attracted to warmth and carbon dioxide. Mosquitoes lay their eggs in water. Mosquito saliva stops blood from clotting. The malarial pathogen live in mosquito salivary glands. You see, when it does says not, you've got to see, okay, then which factor does help to make the mosquito an effective vector? Other three have to be which are helpful. Mosquitoes are attracted to warmth and carbon dioxide. That's they're attracted to humans when they're sleeping and they come and suck the blood. Mosquito saliva stops blood from clotting. That is very helpful because when they suck our blood, it doesn't clot in their mouth. The malarial pathogen live in mosquito salivary glands. Very good idea, because when it has to suck the blood, it has to throw its saliva into our blood, and that it works as an anticoagulant. So it prevents the blood clotting in its pointed mouth parts. Now, does not help to make the mosquito an effective vector because they lay their eggs in water. So it doesn't harm us. The eggs are not anything to do with it. Does not help to make the mosquito. So it's a bit of a weird question, but that's it. That's what life is all about, weird questions. Question 32. What is not a consequence of global warming? So you have to think all the others are consequences. Reduction in thickness of polar ice is because of global warming. Species migration to cooler habitats is global warming. Spread of deserts is global warming. So the only thing which wasn't global warming was reduction in sea level. What describes cross-pollination? When one flower pollinates a different flower on a different plant of the same species. It has to be the same species always, can't be different species. So answer was A. Then question number 34, the diagram shows cells at different stages in the life cycle of an organism. At which stage does meiosis occur? That had to be, meiosis would occur only when 2n to n happens story. So from 2n to n was only in C part, or the gametes were being formed. You see, B was 2n to 2n. A was nothing, n and n combining to form 2, and D was what? The cell and then another n. So the gametes and then another gamete was shown, so it wasn't anything which was different. Meiosis is always, what is meiosis? It's always reduction division. This is a question which today a student asked me is, where does the placenta allow the exchange of materials to take place between the mother and the fetus? You see, you've got to understand is this is the uterus wall. And when the zygote comes here and gets embedded, some of its cells develop into the placenta. So the placenta is actually very in proximity of the uterus wall. And in the uterus wall, what does it have? It is the placenta allows the transfer. On one side, we have the mother's blood. On this side, we have the fetal blood. So the exchange of materials take place between the mother and the fetus in the uterus wall. Can't be in the oviduct wall, that was rubbish. Umbilical cord is actually the connection it makes. This I will connect it, and then you'll have the whole amnion, and then you'll have the fetus developing here. So this is what you have to understand is that the placenta is actually embedded into the uterus wall. And in fact, when the baby delivers, we have to actually pull the umbilical cord to deliver the placenta. And we have to slightly dislodge it. And sometimes a woman has a retained placenta. It means it just won't leave. And then we have to do surgery or we have to remove the uterus. Because sometimes we have to save the mother. And so we have to remove the uterus. Question 36. The graph shows the concentration in the blood of 3 of the 4 hormones, FSH, LH, estrogen, and progesterone. Now, which hormone is not shown? Now, you know this one which peaks, this is LH. And then do you know the one which peaks, which is here, which is peaking just after the 14th day? This is progesterone. And then FSH. FSH increases and then dies down. So there is one graph which shows 2 peaks, and that is estrogen, which has not been shown. And the estrogen graph would be something like this, would increase here and then it would increase here and then it would decrease. So which hormone is not shown? You need to look at these graphs and have a look at it, how estrogen and progesterone and FSH and LH graphs are actually seen. It's in your books as well. Question 37. The genotype. Genotype is already written by letters. The genotype for the height of an organism is written as big T, small t. Fine, good. What conclusion may be drawn? The allele for height has 2 different genes. Now that's rubbish. This gene only one gene for every characteristic. There are at least 2 different alleles. Yes, one is big T and one is small t. Allele means like the alternative form of a gene. Like you say, okay, I've got a Samsung phone and I have an iPhone. So you have 2 mobile phones. Well, you're a lucky guy. I don't think you're lucky. I think you're unlucky. There are 2 different genes for height, each having a single allele. That's rubbish. 2 different genes. Won't be that. That's not the correct English. That's not 2 different genes. There is one allele for height with 2 different forms. No, that's again wrong. I have you have 2 different phones, mobile, an iPhone and an Android. Doesn't mean you have a red Android and also a blue Android. Question 37 done. Question 38. A scientist takes 4 pairs of samples from a wild cherry tree. In which pair of samples could there be cells with different genotypes? 2 fruits. Yeah, fertilization के बाद it fruit forms. After fertilization, then there's fruit formation. So we don't know which pollen, which fertilized, which female gamete. Just like a couple having two children, they'll both will be two different fruits could be compared to the two children, a boy and a girl, two different genotypes. Two leaves, the same thing, two petals, same thing, two root cutting, same thing. Makes sense, you could tell leaves, petal, and root was all changa. And that was not the answer. Question 39. How many chromosomes are there in a zygote which develops into a baby with Down syndrome? 47 chromosomes. Because why? Because the sperm has 23. But sadly, the ovum has one extra chromosome, as 24. So when this fuses and the zygote is formed, it has 47. Then question 40. Which statement describes an example of artificial selection? It has been found that some strains of bacteria produce antibiotics. Please remember, artificial selection is only and only for one purpose, human benefit. I don't say human benefit, I always say it's human greed. Human beings are very greedy. So, human greed is examples of artificial selection. High milk yielding cow, high crop yield wheat crop. So, it is common practice to mate bulls with cows that produce the most milk. Why? Because we want to sell this milk at the market and make money and be richy rich. Number C, it is possible to control caterpillars on food crops by releasing small wasps which lay their eggs in caterpillars and kill them. That's a form of biological pest control, actually. Mosquitoes have developed strains that are resistant to insecticides. It's natural selection. And it has been found that some strains of bacteria produce antibiotic. Well, that's nothing. That's not natural selection. I think it's just a figure out of speech that they've given you a biological fact, which that some strains of bacteria produce antibiotics which kill maybe their own bacteria because antibiotics kill bacteria. So artificial selection is always and always of economically important plants and animals. It's your syllabus point. So you had to figure that out and then you would be able to do this question. Okay, I finish here now and this is the second video of it. I hope this has been a helpful video and please do give your comments if you have any other issues and also please like the videos so that it helps me to get more subscribers and likes on the video and this will increase of course the people who are accessing these videos and benefiting from it. And thank you once again and best of luck.